Welcome to the Toronto Maple Leafs Lounge, where we get together with all the writers from the hockey writers that cover the league's favorite and most hated team, the Toronto Maple Leafs, joined by the old prof, that is Jim Parsons, Peter Baracchini, a co-host from Sticks from the Six, a podcast you can find on thehockeywriters.com, and our newest addition to the team, that is the rookie, Alex Hobson. Thanks so much for being here today. We got lots to talk about on this team chat, and let's start with the dirty team. Suddenly, the team that was too soft and just didn't have enough grit, no sandpaper. Now they're being called the dirty team. And if you missed it, Wayne Simmonds had some pretty strong words when the Jets were talking about cheap shots that were being thrown at their players and things like that. Wayne Simmonds said every time we play them, they try to come at us, run us out of the building. So we come back and we're physical, and now we're a dirty team. I don't buy it. I don't buy that. I think we're defending ourselves, playing the game physical. It's playoff hockey. If you didn't love the Wayne train already, you love him more now. So yeah, there's been a couple fines in the last 10 days. Both Zach Hyman got a $5,000 fine against the Jets for a high sticking. And then a Jet ran into Joe Thornton and his beard, and Joe got a fine for that one as well. So guys, suddenly this soft team is being called a dirty team. Peter, are they dirty?
It's going back to like the old early thousands, the Bay Street Bullies, where you had Ty Domi, Shane Corson, Darcy Tucker, But I mean, Wayne said it best. They're just standing their ground. I mean, like they didn't want to they've been pushed over for far too long. They didn't really have the toughness. They'd had Matt Martin back in 2017. They tried to add in Brian Boyle. He was gone very quickly. They have guys who can answer the call when they need to answer the call. And that was the main reasons why Dubas brought in Wayne Simmonds, to be that vocal and physical presence when they need to be. And seeing, Pierre-Luc Dubois go a little bit late in on Jack Campbell, where he hits him in the head, Wayne Simmonds comes up and stands up for his goalie. That's what you want. That's what any other team does. I don't understand why it's a double standard now with the Maple Leafs.
And the Winnipeg Jets said that teams know they have to answer the bell when they come in here. This was Connor Hellebuck, and because the Jets play such a strong game. And then he says sometimes they're not capable of doing it, and they cheap shot like that. So Alex, Hellebuck pretty much calling them cheap shot artists at this point.
Yeah, just to more or less echo what Wayne Simmonds said, I don't buy it. For a team that's had a stigma around them as a soft team that never throws the body, never throws hits, I feel like there's a little bit of a buffer period that you have to go through before you can be called a dirty team. I don't see anything wrong with the way the Leafs played. They did start throwing the body. Joe Thornton's 6'4". Like, you can't do much about that play right there. And like Peter said, if you're coming after their goalie, there's guys that can answer the bell. And I don't see anything wrong with the way they played. This is the play style that fans have been clamoring for years. And now that they're throwing the body, people appear to have a problem with it. And I don't get it. I don't buy it, like Wayne said.
All right, let's switch gears then, because the old prof, he just put an amazing article out today that you've got to head to thehockeywriters.com and give it a read. And it's all about Zach Hyman, and Zach Hyman not being driven by the money. And great article. We've talked a lot on this show about Zach Hyman and how much we all love him, but the old prof really dug into Zach Hyman. Tell us all about that article.
It started with reading about Pierre LeBrun's good research, where he said after the knee injury and the reaction by the Maple Leafs fans, he went out and he called about a half dozen of the general managers, I think, on NHL teams, and he said, "What's Hyman worth on the open market?" And they gave him a number of numbers from 4.5 million to whatever. And I mean, Brendan Gallagher from the Canadiens was up 6.5. So he's asking, what will it cost to sign him? And really, that struck me as not what I was seeing in Zach Hyman. I followed Hyman for a long time. He was one of my first posts that I ever wrote about 3 years ago, because I was interested. He was a children's author. So I asked two questions to myself that really started my own research. One was, who is this guy and what drives him? Because typically people believe that hockey players are chasing the money. And I thought, I don't think this guy is going to chase the money. So I read his children's books again, and I sort of explicated or summarized them and said, what are the lessons here? What really drives Hyman to work? And three things came to me as I pulled out the lessons that he taught in his books. One was loyalty. He's an amazingly loyal person. The second was legacy. I think he has a really sense of the legacy that he could leave behind, and I think he wants to do that. And the third one is dreams, just following the dreams. Because if you read every one of his children's books, they're all about those things, those three things. And I think those are the characteristics. And I don't know how much money he's going to get on his contract, but I do believe that I have never seen Kyle Dubas underpay a core player on the Maple Leafs. And Zach Hyman is, in my mind, a core player on the Maple Leafs and will be one for years down the road.
I couldn't agree with you more on that. The only thing that sticks in my mind after that knee injury is that he's got baby Theo at home, and maybe the wife and the family saw that injury and said, you know what, that's one more big hit away from maybe ending your NHL career, and you got to get all the money you can get front-ended right now. Peter, do you think that could be playing in the back of Zach's mind right now?
It's always playing in the back of players' mind. Their health and safety is, the utmost concern. But the difference between this injury and the one that he sustained in the playoffs about a year or so ago, he needed long-term surgery. This seemed more like a sprain, and which is why the injury isn't as severe, and he'll be ready just about when the playoffs start. But I mean, and I think that's why, you brought in guys like Joe Thornton and Jason Spezza, guys who have taken league minimum more or less than, maybe what other people have said that their value is, to come here and follow their dreams and be an impact player no matter what. And Jason Spezza is, putting up 20 plus points right now on league minimum. And that's really great. So maybe if money isn't an issue for Zach Hyman and he takes less than what he is deserved just to stay on a team right here, despite the fact that he should get more on the open market, it's an interesting debate. And considering where he's at right now, how important he is at his team, and how much of an impact he's doing playing in any spot of the lineup, if Dubas goes at $4 to $5 million in between there, that's a big steal for them, and it's going to be great value for Hyman, especially if it's a 6-year deal.
Now, when we're talking contracts, there's a contract we haven't had to talk about in a long time, and that's Morgan Rielly, the longest serving Maple Leaf. And he's been through it all since 2013. He has seen the ups and downs. And now there's starting to be some grumbles of, is Morgan Rielly expendable possibly on this team? Because they do have such a core of defensemen starting to work their way up and possibly getting a shot in that lineup. Alex, you've been doing some looking at that. And what are you seeing when it comes to Rielly and his future with the Leafs?
So first and foremost, I want to preface this by saying that I have the utmost respect for Morgan Rielly, and as the longest serving Leaf, it's going to be a sad day when he leaves. However, I think they're at a point now where they've got who could potentially become a newer version of Rielly and Rasmus Sandin. And we haven't been able to see much of him over the past year and a bit, but his development has gone a little bit faster, I think, than maybe Leafs brass would have expected. And I think the Leafs are looking for a way to get him into the lineup regularly. And the way that I see it, they've got Jake Muzzin locked up for 4 more years. He's not going anywhere. And while you could make the argument that Travis Dermott's expendable, I don't think you want to develop Sandin on that bottom pairing, buried playing 9, 10, 11 minutes a night. And another team that I look at when I compare this situation is the Colorado Avalanche. We saw how they traded Tyson Barrie to Toronto, knowing that they had Cale Makar in the system, who was ready to take that spot as the number 1 right defenseman. And while Sandin probably isn't to the same pedigree as Cale Makar, I think it's a similar situation in Toronto. And at this point, Rielly hasn't really looked the same since his 2018-19 season, where he put up 72 points. The offense has still been there to an extent, but I think now that the Leafs have a better rounded defensive core. We're starting to see some more of his defensive flaws open up a little bit. And I was taking a look at some other guys that have been paid, and some guys that are in a similar situation or were in a similar situation to the one that Rielly's in now. A couple names that came to mind: Oliver Ekman-Larsson, Chris Letang, Jared Spurgeon. They've all cashed out at $7 to $8 million a year. And I am not certain that that's money that the Leafs would be comfortable with committing to Rielly long-term, especially with Sandin waiting there in the system. So I don't know. I think the Leafs are looking to give Sandin a chance to really grow on the team to become a pivotal part of the core. And Rielly might have to be the one to go if that's the case.
And that said, a lot of the power play problems that the Leafs have been going through for the last 19, 20 games, people are pinning on the guy that's supposed to be back on the blue line, being the quarterback, being the big shot, and that's Morgan Rielly, and he's not taking the shot. So, Old Prof, do you think that Morgan Rielly's time with the Leafs may be over?
Until Alex wrote about it, I really hadn't thought about that at all. It wasn't on my radar a bit. But I do say that even at a small end, like an N of one, I thought Sandin came in and played really well. I thought he looked smooth. He looked comfortable. He stretched past all day. I thought he was really good. And I thought, where have they been hiding this guy? Because he wasn't that good last season, I don't think. So I may have missed it, but I really thought he looked good. And honestly, now that Alex has said that and wrote about it, I can see the possibility if that's the case. But to be truthful, it wasn't on my radar a bit until he did that. So thank you, Alex, for that.
There he
Anytime.
goes, the rookie stepping up here.
Yeah.
All right, next up is Mike Foligno. I'm just used to it. Mike Foligno's son. That's Mike Foligno's jersey back there. But Mike Foligno's son, Nick Foligno, makes his debut. We all raved about it. We were even just talking about in the dying seconds of the game, instead of trying to force it into the empty net and possibly not get it and let the Jets go back the other way, he just did a nice calm little curl, and there's Mitch Marner for an easy one. Just showed how much of a veteran and how much leadership and how much smarts this guy has. And it's got me kind of wondering if this is the kind of guy, when we talk about all these great leaders on this team, if this is the kind of guy that the Leafs should be looking at pursuing in the offseason when he's an unrestricted free agent. So, Peter, take the ball from that one. Is that something that should be on the radar?
Definitely a possibility. I mean, we saw how unselfish of a play he made. Instead of trying to go for the empty net goal, he curls it back, like you said, gives it to Marner, and then Marner, having another classy move and picking up the puck and giving him, for his first point. And I honestly thought he got it on his first assist on that snipe that Marner made. So I'm kind of a little bit confused, but hey, he got a point regardless. If the Leafs do try and resign him, I have no problem with it at all, especially if now maybe, Nick Foligno knows his worth, his contract may be going down. Kind of similar to, again, what we talked about Thornton and Spezza. Is he going to take a bit of a hit to stay on a team that could possibly win? I mean, he's got a home in Columbus. That's been his home for quite some time. He has a family there. It's very possible that he could go back and, still be a part of that organization, which, it makes sense. But if he's going more now based on his career and a chance to win, Columbus Blue Jackets are at the bottom of the league right now. I don't think they're at any point going to win in the next year or two. Toronto is probably his best bet. He could possibly sign somewhere else. But, knowing the history with his dad and this franchise and the way that he's talking about it in the media right now, he seems like a keeper. And if Kyle Dubas has any inclination to sign him, I have no issue whatsoever. Obviously, if the price is right, or if players do leave and he has more money to give over to Foligno to say, hey, we want to give you this to stay in Toronto for this amount of years, are you going to sign? If he says yes, it's a win, no matter what.
Alex, you called it out a couple of weeks ago that Tortorella might be done in Columbus, and it seems like that is definitely the case now. And when Peter talks about the possibility of Foligno going back to Columbus, which was one of the first questions that the Columbus media asked of Nick when he signed or when he was traded, and he said he was wide open to it. But now it looks like Columbus might be going in a totally different direction. And what would they need a 33, 34-year-old player to come back when they need a fresh start? So that kind of eliminates that in my mind. What do you think on that front with Columbus possibly going a different direction?
I think ultimately it's all going to come down to how the Leafs do in the playoffs this year, because Foligno, we all know how much he loves Columbus. He spent the last, I believe, 6 or 7 years there. He's been their captain for that amount of time as well. And we all know how much he loves the city, how much he loves the team, and the impact that he's made in the community there. Having said that, at his age, I think his number one priority at this point would be winning a Stanley Cup. And I think that if the Leafs manage to pull out a cup win this year, I think the door is wide open for him to go back to Columbus, because at that point he'll have achieved what I assume he'd be going for at this stage of his career. Having said that, if he doesn't win the cup here, I feel like there might be that little instance of unfinished business, and it already appears that he is loving life in Toronto. He's loving his teammates. He's loving the brass. So I think I'm not going to try and speak for Nick Foligno. I think that the cup is probably his number one priority at this point, but at the same time, we all know how much he loves Columbus. So I think if he achieves that sort of success in Toronto, I think he'll head back there, and I think that's where he'd like to finish his career off. But if they don't win the cup this year, and there's still a chance at him getting one with the Leafs in the future, and he's willing to take a pay cut, I think he would return.
Old Prof, one of the great clips coming out of Foligno when he went there is his memories of being a 5-year-old kid in '93 and walking through what felt like a parade in Toronto when they were in that incredible run in the playoffs. Is that the kind of seed that sticks with somebody that maybe they're going to be the next guy that takes a real hometown discount and like Alex said, you get it done in Toronto because that's where your memories are?
I was thinking about when we were just talking about Patrick Marleau. And when he broke Gordie Howe's record this week, and he actually broke down and they said, what keeps you playing at 21? And he broke down and he said, the people in the locker room, the players, these people are family. And, I think that's understated these days. And we've talked about it in leadership before, but I think that matters. And I think the fact that his dad played for the Maple Leafs, I think that he has a home in Sudbury. The family, Columbus is a great city. I know it quite well because of Ohio State University being there. So I've been often, but it's a great city and it's a good place to live. But they do come back to Sudbury, and that sort of rings in my mind that they're Canadians too. I mean, I know Nick was born in Buffalo when his dad played there, but they come back to Sudbury. So, it depends on his family as much as anything, I think, and what age his kids are and those sort of things. But I love the guy. I think he's an amazing player, exactly the kind of player that the Maple Leafs need and want on their team. So I hope he does come back. I can't call it.
All right, let's switch gears then again. And before we do that, I have to say, you got to follow us at your favorite social media channel. We are the hockeywriters.com. We are the Hockey Writer on Twitter because they restricted the characters for the name. So it's just a singular. But everywhere else, we are the Hockey Writers. And we would love if you followed us on all your social media channels. And of course, check out our webpage at hockeywriters.com. And please like and subscribe this channel you're watching this on right now. We've been going up in the subscribers, and that really helps us move things along with our bigger plans here at the Hockey Writers. So thank you so much for following along and telling us what you think. So now's the time when we do a little bit of a roundup of social media, because there are so many characters out there and posting funny things and thoughtful things and all those different things. And Jim, when you talked about Patrick Marleau, I saw this one, and we don't have the there you go. See?
Yeah.
So it shows the Atlanta Thrashers, 1999 to 2011. Joe Marleau, my goodness. 1997 to present. So he's outlasted a franchise. And I don't know if you guys probably also saw Patrick Marleau, that crazy stat that he's played with like 30% of all NHLers to ever play the game. Unbelievable. So glad that we got to watch him for 2 seasons in Toronto. But I thought that was a pretty cool one on social media this week. Peter, did you see anything on social media that had you taking a screen grab or writing it down for the show?
Just Wade Simmons' comments in general. I mean, that to me, like, as soon as like that press conference came out and then that question was answered, "Are you a dirty team?" and he said what he said, my first initial reaction is Wayne Simmons does not care what you think at all, and that's the attitude and the mentality that the Maple Leafs should go with from here on out. But in terms of just like, overall giving me a good laugh, Alex, you're not on this week, don't worry. But there's this one account, the tweet read, "Best actors short list: Daniel Day-Lewis, Tom Hanks, Denzel Washington, hockey player getting hit by a leaf, Joaquin Phoenix, Morgan Freeman." Well, you guys are laughing, so that gave me a good chuckle right then and there. So, and it goes in line with what Wade Simmons was talking about. So,
yeah, I thought you were going to say Sidney Crosby, but I like that one too. Alex, social media, what did you see out there?
Well, I don't really have anything comedic, but I saw a tweet from Kristen Shilton scooping a quote from Nick Foligno. I believe this would have been the day of his NHL debut on Thursday. And I think it was a really important quote. He said, Nick Foligno was asked about Robin Lehner's comments yesterday. And for those who aren't aware, Robin Lehner, following a game earlier this week, he didn't take any questions from the media. He essentially just used 10 minutes to speak about the state of players' mental health during this season and what it's like playing in these unforeseen circumstances. And he said, and Foligno said on Lehner's comments, he acknowledged NHLers are in a privileged position, but also said that when it comes to protecting mental health, you don't discount someone's feelings just because of their stature. And I think a lot of people need to hear that. I feel like a lot of people are under the impression that NHL players, just because they're getting paid millions to play a child's game to make a living, they must be picture perfect mentally 24/7. And this is a bit of a tough situation for guys. I mean, we even look at Nick Foligno. We're talking about how he's getting traded to Toronto and he's probably living his dream right now, but he had to leave his family behind in Ohio. And guys aren't allowed to leave the hotels. They're not allowed to really enjoy that social aspect of playing in the NHL. So, just because they're making millions doesn't mean they're not suffering here and there. So I think that was a really important point for Foligno to make, and I'm glad that Shilton tweeted it.
Yeah. In that goalie fraternity, watching Connor Hellebuck and what he was saying about the Leafs, but during that press conference, he mentioned we've forgotten that this is a game. And he said it's because maybe the fans not being there that we're not having that enjoyment. But he mentioned that as well. And that's got to be affecting the mental health of these players too. They're back and forth between a hotel and an empty arena and battling the same teams all the time. And there's no one cheering, there's no one chanting for them. And that's got to be wearing on them. So old Prof, what did you see out there? And I know lots of comments come in on your articles on a daily basis.
Yeah, I was just saying to my wife that I have a group of people that I talk to almost every day, a group of the readers, and they're becoming my friends. So I appreciate them, as I say every week, and I do. That Frederick Anderson has come up this week in some of the comments, and just the reminder that he's been a good goalie for the Maple Leafs for a good long time, and that I think I've been cautioned and others have been cautioned not to forget how important he's been to the franchise. And whatever happens to Anderson is going to be, I don't think he'll be back, but I think that'll be a sad day for the Maple Leafs, because he really did come in at a time when they needed him and he performed. And he's been good since then. He's one of the best goalies in the franchise history. So I appreciate him. And I was reminded by readers that we all, as Maple Leaf fans, ought to appreciate Frederick Anderson.
Yeah. He was the first real true starting goalie I ever had the pleasure of watching. I started watching right when Ray Croft was between the pipes. So tough times. Yeah,
no kidding. Okay, so I need your guys' help with this next one, because last week we talked about something I saw on social media, and it was a new fan to the sport asking, why does everyone hate the Maple Leafs? I wrote an article given what we had talked about and got a lot of talk on that. And it had me thinking, because you got to balance it. The article was called, Why Do So Many People Hate the Maple Leafs? We got to balance the love, right, old Prof? We're going to make the love on this one with why do so many people love the Maple Leafs? Because this is not an easy team to get behind. you guys know it more than me, but it's not an easy team to cheer for, and yet they have the largest fan base. They've got the loudest vocalists. All the things that we said why they are so hated is another reason that shows why they're so loved. People go to bat for this team. And there was one article or one comment on there that I read, and the guy is over in England and he stumbled across the NHL in the early 90s. First televised game was Leafs away to the Kings, and I noticed two players, Wendell and Dougie. The next game that was also the Leafs, my thoughts were, that guy wearing 17 I like, and I've watched the Leafs ever since. So that was kind of cool. And to me, I thought, I want to know why people love this team so much. And so what are your thoughts, Peter? Why do you love the Leafs? Why do you think people love the Leafs?
Well, same thing like that commenter there. Like the first game I ever watched was a Maple Leaf game, but obviously, Gilmore and Clark were just tad bit. I was only probably about 2 when, they were in that 93 series, but the first game I ever watched it was Matt Sundin, and I fell automatically in love with him and the team itself from there on out. I guess just exposure for me and this commentator itself. You could try and say that like my dad was trying to get me into a Boston game when the Leafs are playing Boston and say, hey, cheer for this team. But yeah, no way. Sorry, Dad. But it's just what you're drawn to. You see one player, you're drawn to them, you want to become a fan instantaneously. And that was for me with that. But I think also when you have the success that they've had previously and then the downs and you want them to succeed as much, that's where the passion really comes from. So I think that's why many have like loved this team for so many years, because they know they've been successful. They've had their lulls, but they want to see it, get to that point again. And we're seeing that right now with this core and with this team that's being assembled.
Alex, we know you started with the Raycroft era, but you could have gone to any other team out there. Why do you like this team? Why do you think so many people like this team?
So I think it all, like we've said before, it all comes back to the same reason that people hate the team so much. It's because they're one of, if not the biggest market in the NHL. And that's why I think in your example, especially Kevin, it's reaching fans over in England because they're that big of a market. And if you think of the NHL, one of the first teams you're going to think of is the Toronto Maple Leafs. Speaking from my own personal experience, I think it all comes from being how you're raised, because I was raised into a family of Leaf fans, with the exception of my one grandfather. He's a Habs fan, but don't have to talk about him. Yeah, but luckily my parents figured it out, and they're both Leaf fans. So I grew up watching Matt Sundin, just like Peter said. My first favorite player ever was Darcy Tucker. I was born on the 16th. He wore number 16. So I naturally gravitated towards him. And I think ultimately that's what it comes down to, because I think if you're at a point where you don't know anything about hockey and no one in your life knows anything about hockey, but you want to get into the sport, a quick Google search will tell you that the Leafs have not had much success lately. But I feel like just being born into a family that grew up cheering for the Leafs during their glory days, or at least throughout the early 90s and the early 2000s when they were exciting and they had a team worth watching, I feel like it all comes back to that. I was born into a house of Leaf fans. I didn't have much of a choice, but here we are.
Yeah. So with me, it was started watching hockey in the 80s, and that's before your guys' time. But the 80s Leafs is a forgotten era. That was some dark times in Leafland. So that kind of spread out, everyone else looking for a different team to cheer for. And into the 90s, I liked watching Martin Brodeur. And I more had favorite players than teams. So I'd watch players more. And then, to be honest, it wasn't until I left Southern Ontario, moved across Canada, 4 different provinces. Everywhere I went, people would say, where are you from? And I'd say Woodstock, and no one knows where Woodstock is. They'd say, so I'd always have to say how close that is to Toronto. And then they'd go, oh, you're a Leafs fan. That was always the second thing that would be said. And at first I was like, well, and then I was like, yeah, I am, because every time I was out there and somebody would throw shade on the Leafs, I felt like it was throwing it on my home. That's my family. That's my friends. That's all my memories growing up that people are hating on for no real reason. And so I became a lot defensive of home. And to me, home was the Toronto Maple Leafs. And that's what I've carried where I've gone and just developed that over the last 20 years. So Now, I know, old prof, that you only started following the team maybe 2-3 years ago, but they've really kind of etched their way into your heart a little bit too.
Yeah, I was thinking about this last night, that I really see hockey as a canvas for which I can see stories. And I'm trying to get to know these people as stories, right? As humans not yet fulfilled, right? Not yet finished. And so I look at Marner and his contract negotiations, and then the difficulties he's had last year, because I think he went from being loved to not being loved. And it was only, I think, an iconic moment for me this year was when he met Campbell after that 11th victory, and he counted out those 11. That's the happiest time I've seen Marner in a long time. I love the stories of what these kids are going through as they're growing. So for me, I've grown to know the people. I love Gelsencha. I like Tyler Ennis. I love these kids who come in there and they try so hard. They something they always wanted to do, and that's where hockey. For me, I would probably love Columbus if I were covering Columbus, because there's stories everywhere. But I really love the stories on this team. I'm getting to know Matthews. I'm getting to know all of these young people, and I just really have come to like them as people, see their faults, see the, Nylander's sometimes hard to love. I like him, right? Those are the stories that really keep me involved in writing for the hockey writers and the places I want to pick on. So yeah, I like this team because it's just full of human beings who are having difficulties and successes. So much like life.
I think that kind of goes back to what we were saying with the saturation and the guy that in England can watch this team. There's so much media around the Leafs that we hear these stories and we see these great stories. And just watching the stuff in Winnipeg this week, and having worked in Winnipeg at one point, there's not nearly the media there that there is in Toronto. And listening to Connor Hellebuck, I was like, I want to hear more out of this team. And because he just said, first thing he said is, I shouldn't have been pulled. Like, it was just totally all these different things. But these are the stories that we don't hear because there just isn't that saturation level that we see in the mecca of hockey. Everyone's agreeing, so we don't need to.
Well, that
Just head nods.
I had no counterpoint there.
No. So that's great. That's we'll spread some love this week. We'll put out why this team is the most loved, and it's funny because it's going to be a lot of the same reasons why they're most hated. But there's a lot of good guys on there, a lot of character, and they're a fun team to watch. And we at the Hockey Writers love covering them, love writing about them, and love bringing the stories to the Maple Leaf Lounge to share with you. Thank you so much for watching. Thanks, guys, for making the time, and it's always great to see you guys. And until next week, that's it for the Maple Leafs Lounge.